So I'm here with Matt Avery, who is the product manager for all of our EventDay products.
Yep.
When and why did you start here at RunSignup?
Well, it's a fun story. So I was a timer for this company called Yellow Jacket Racing out of Rochester, New York. It was a company that was owned by a local Fleet Feet running store where I grew up. I was a runner in college, and I got a job working at the running shop over the summers. And so I was working at the front selling shoes, and this company had a timing business as well. They were called Yellow Jacket Racing. They put on a few events a year and provided contract timing to a couple as well. They weren't doing a ton of business, but it was a close knit community and provided timing services to local events and things like this. When I graduated college, I graduated with a computer science degree, and I was given the opportunity to work for a company called Paychecks. They do processing of paychecks, and a lot of the people who I graduated my graduating class with ended up working for Paychecks, and I decided that I didn't want to be a code monkey working for a big corporation. And Yellow Jacket, Fleet Feet at that time, they offered me a job managing all the technology for their little timing company.
And you're still working for Paychecks, just in a
Just
different
different
sense.
way. Yeah. So I started working timing races, and basically this company had a bunch of old hardware. They had been scoring races since the very early days of chip timing. One of the earliest systems they in the United States they used, and it was very, very old. And so basically they tasked me with figuring out, doing market research, figuring out what is the best and cheapest system out there for chip systems. So, RFID tags and readers and such, and what software works best with it. So that's your timing system, your scoring software, and also your registration provider. So they, they used a few different companies before this, and they wanted a new start. And so they tasked me with just doing a wholesale overhaul of their technology for this company. And so I spent a winter doing a bunch of research and calling a bunch of people and asking about recommendations. So I started with the hardware, and we had a working relationship with MyLapse. And so we had some of their really old hardware, and I called up our account manager and said, hey, what's the newest stuff? Tell me about it. I considered a few different options, and we ended up going with MyLapse's new bib tag hardware, which was awesome. And then from there, I decided, okay, I got the hardware. Now I have to figure out what kind of software to use to put together our results. And the two big ones at the time were RunScore and the Race Director. And I looked at both, and I decided that the Race Director was more for me. It's a little bit easier to understand. It was a user-friendly piece of software. It's pretty old still, but I could understand how it worked. I could point and click through it. I felt like I could train people on it fairly easily. Whereas with RunScore, it was very powerful, and I could understand it as a computer science major, but I would have had trouble teaching it to people. So I got the scoring software all settled, and at that point, we were just looking for new registration software. And because I knew that this was the early days of results being online, this was around 2011 or so, I knew that, different registration companies were doing more with the results platforms and integrated results. This was like starting to be a big thing, and people wanted to see text alerts as soon as they finished. So I called up Roger Bradshaw and was like, hey, Roger, new customer with the Race Director. I see you have all these different options for registration providers. You can integrate with registration providers. Well, I'm looking for a new registration provider. What would you recommend? And he's like, oh, RunSignup. No doubt. Like, they're the best. They're awesome. He's like, they do such a better job with their integration. Their APIs are fantastic. He's like, and their support is great. He's like, if you're looking for a new registration, go with RunSignup. This is how I actually was introduced to RunSignup, was through Roger Bradshaw. And so I, got in with RunSignup, talked with Brian Jenkins, and we got all of our races moved over from Yellow Jacket Racing onto RunSignup. And so I spent the next 4 years growing our business. I started, like I said, as a technology coordinator and worked my way up to being the operations manager of the company. And so I was basically coordinating all of the staff as well as all of our technology. And it became, I got a little bit bored of it and was kind of sick of going to multiple events every single weekend. We were doing about 130 races a year at the time. And it was a lot to manage. And when I heard in 2015 that the race director was going to be acquired by RunSignup, I immediately picked up the phone and called Brian Jenkins and was like, "Hey, Brian, I heard that you guys are buying the race director. I'm looking for a change in life. Do you need someone to help you with support? Because I know these 2 pieces of software like the back of my hand." And Brian's like, "Oh, heck yeah. I don't know anything about the race director. And like, I'm sure that we'll need people who are experts in that field." So he's like, "I'll get you set up with a call with Bob." And I had a call with Bob and he said, "Yeah, that sounds great. Why don't you come to Philly?" And so I drove down to Philly. They interviewed me and hired me on the spot. So it was just serendipitous, I guess. I found myself, working customer support, and I hadn't really done that before, but it was fun. I knew a lot about it. And the idea was that I eventually wanted to get back into computer science stuff, and I wanted to start utilizing my degree and my knowledge of technology, actually. I felt like I had, spent a good amount of time in the trenches, timing races, and I wanted to get more on the back end.
It's funny, until just now, I didn't know any of that backstory.
Oh, really?
I knew that, well, because at the time I was the only one answering support emails on InfoAt.
Yeah.
And Bob said, "Hey, do you want a second person?" So I thought that was why you came to join us.
Right.
I didn't realize all the experience that you had brought coming into RunSignup.
It was like very exciting for me. It felt very prestigious to work for like a big company. Like, even though we weren't a big company at the time, it was bigger than my company that I was.
We just got an
for.
office. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, we have an office. Like, that's cool. Like, that's amazing. We had an office, but it was the back of a running shop. So kind of an office. It was great. And, you and I, remember those years. It was a very different time. A lot less emails.
2 people could handle it for the week.
Yeah. It very quickly became unsustainable.
Things are making a lot more sense now, though, because I was like, oh, okay. I thought, he started just doing support emails, and now you're managing all the EventDay stuff.
Yeah, no, it just it made sense at the time for me to kind of introduce myself as a support role, because I knew the stuff, and there wasn't really a position that would have made sense for me coming in with that kind of level of experience at that time. Like, maybe it would have been like a Crisp, right? Like, Crisp has a ton of background experience and knowledge, and when he got hired by us, he came right into that role. He didn't come in as a low-level support person as I did, because you guys didn't need an expert at that time. You just needed someone to answer emails. And so, but I was happy to do it, and it was great. And, eventually over time, the idea was that we have the race director software, and we knew that eventually it was no longer going to be supported on Windows, and Roger was no longer going to be able to support it himself. And eventually he'll want to retire, maybe, probably never actually, but so the idea was that, hey, at some point in the future, Matt is going to take on leading a project to build out a brand new scoring software. Based on all of the experience that I had, based on using the race director, based on working with Roger, troubleshooting and things like this, we were going to kind of build this new thing from the ground up. So the team was assembled. It was me, Roger Bradshaw, James Harris. James Harris was RaceJoy, and he was acquired. Their company was acquired in the same year, 2015. So James had already done a ton of work with RaceJoy to integrate directly with these chip systems. So he built that connector software, which is what we use for file streaming, where we're always looking at a folder, looking for changes. It's a very well thought out system that he built to take chip hardware, and he was using it to put it into GPS timing RaceJoy. So back in the day, early RaceJoy, they actually integrated with chip systems out in the field. So instead of getting GPS data, they could also get chip data from the readers directly. So we took that part of RaceJoy and used that as the start of race day scoring to get the chip data, because he had worked with all these manufacturers to figure out their files and how they work. So we kind of melded James Harris's connection to the data and Roger Bradshaw and myself's knowledge of how reports should look and how to manage participant data to build out race day scoring. So that started in 2017, I think, early 2017, 2016, can't recall, something like that. And so Steven, your brother, built it, the first version of it, and then kind of passed it off to us. So James Harris and Michael Chisholm are the main big developers for race day scoring these days. We also have a few others. Jack Moscato, don't know if I pronounced his name wrong, I'm sorry. Jack, Chelsea, and a few others are a part of the EventDay team who work on race day scoring. And we have been improving it little by little ever since then.
When you talk about the things that James Harris brought over, is that what you had in that drop down?
Yeah.
Okay, because when you were showing me that, I was thinking you guys probably had to do a lot of work to like figure out all the settings for each. So James brought that in from
RaceJoy.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So my role as a product manager now is basically, I started, as I said, as a customer support representative, and then was tasked with the initial designs and ideas for how race day scoring would work and operate and look and feel. And that was a little bit different of a role than I do now. Now, what I'm doing mostly as a product manager is taking feedback from our clients and from our support team and boiling them down into issues that we track on GitHub, and saying, okay, well, there's a bunch of people who are asking for this feature, or maybe there's a big client out there that we could win if we had this feature. And then what I do is I, with my knowledge of RunSignup's APIs and my technical background, I can figure out like, okay, well, this would be possible fairly easily if we approached it this way versus, we could do it perfect, but it'll take a year. So what I spend a lot of time doing is figuring out like, okay, like, yes, people want this feature. They want this specific thing. But maybe if we gave them something that's not quite perfect, but good enough, and it's really easy, and we could ship it out fast, that's great. And so what I do is I put together issues and break them up into small pieces. And then I have a weekly or biweekly meeting with our developers, and we go over one by one with each developer what they're going to be tasked with for the next 2-week sprint period. And then every week we have a sprint review where we discuss what they worked on that week, how things are going. Do we need to change tack? If they have any questions about like, hey, I'm at a fork in the road on this thing. I could do it this way or I could do it that way. And I give them feedback on, well, I feel like most people are going to be using it this way, so maybe this other approach isn't going to work. So it's a lot of back and forth between clients and our developers to figure out what we're going to build, how we're going to build it, and then also following up with customers once we deploy a feature for them, saying, hey, we ended up getting this thing out for you. Thanks for the feedback. Let us know if you need anything else. So it's mostly organization and cataloging all of the requests that we get and putting them into issues that a developer can, number one, manage, and number two, understand, because clients and developers don't speak the same language.
It's true. I look at Steven's computer and it's like, I don't know what that is. He's got all the code up.
It's Python.
It's code, right? So now as the product manager, you're also working with the apps that the EventDay team is putting together, right?
Yeah, that's right. So basically my team that I work with, the EventDay team, effectively we own all of the applications that integrate with RunSignup. So all of the products that interface with RunSignup but are not RunSignup themselves are under my umbrella. And so that includes the race day check-in app, it includes the tickets app, it includes mobile timing app. Anything that uses the API effectively is under my purview in terms of development coordination. So one of the major responsibilities that I got after race day scoring was off the ground was inheriting the race day check-in app. Race day check-in app was developed by Ryan Snell, many years ago, and it was something that we knew we needed to build. A lot of other companies had check-in apps that were very successful, and so Ryan built it, and then it kind of didn't get updated. It was really difficult to update, and we didn't really have the resources to do it. So the idea was, let's put that product under the ownership of the race day event day team. And so we took it over and we overhauled it. We added a whole bunch of features that people had been asking for years, and now we maintain it. So the reason why we wanted this kind of separation was that the way that the RunSignup development environment works is very different from the way that our app production environment works. So apps require a very different time frame in terms of how you are deploying code, whereas on the web, Bob says it all the time, we deploy like thousands and thousands of updates every year. We do like every week, we're doing like 10 updates, whatever. You can't do that with apps because apps require store approval. So for the race day check-in app, we have to do a build. We have to go do a beta build, we do testing on the build, and then we do a deployment to the Apple Store and the Google Play Store. And then we have to wait for Apple and Google to actually approve the builds that we upload, and then it's deployed. So we can't do those every day because we would spend all the time in the world waiting for Apple and Google to approve our builds. So this is why we have a more structured approach to how we handle deployment. So we do these 2-week sprints where we line up and say, okay, we're going to try and do these features, and that will be a release that we put out in the wild in 2 weeks or however long it takes to get there. The idea is that we're not going to be doing daily builds because it's just not possible to keep up. It's just too much effort. So we have a longer time to deploy, essentially. So it made sense for our team to kind of take on any of the applications and let RunSignup do what it does best, which is quick, fast deployment to the web. So our team handles any of the long-term deployments that require code signing and require app store approval and so on and so forth. So that includes race day check-in and the tickets app. After race day check-in, we took that over. We got the tickets app implemented, which allows for not only the check-in of tickets, but also on-site purchase of tickets. We integrate with printers and do a whole bunch of other stuff with these apps that all our great customers have asked for over the years. We're very proud of our apps. They're probably the most popular feature that we have is our race day check-in app.
Now you mentioned customers asking about things to add to the apps.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get a lot of feedback from customers on what to be doing next?
Sure, absolutely. We have a massive backlog of things that I want to do. We got about 1,000 things in race day scoring I want to do. We got about 500 things in race day check-in I want to do. And they'll all get there eventually, maybe. But it's the main part of the job to figure out which are the ones we have to do now and which are the ones we want to do, but they have to get done later. So there's a lot of stuff. Whenever a customer asks for a feature, we don't have it, I create an issue. If it's not already there, I log it. I put their information in there. I explain what their use case is. I link to our support ticket, and I provide an example or why someone else might want to use it. And then in the future, if someone else asks for the same thing, I add their information to the issue. So I have this running backlog of all of the items that people are asking for. And at the end of the year, we do a big year-end review, and I go through and I see, this one issue came up like 10 times this year. We should prioritize this. This is a major thing. It's going to be a lot of effort, but there's a lot of people asking for it. Or there's maybe it's something that not too many people asked for, but it's really easy. Let's just do it. It'd be a big win. It'd be really easy to accomplish. So it's kind of this matrix of a square, right? How many people are asking for it and how difficult it is. If it's no one's asking for it and it's really difficult, you don't do that quadrant. Mm-hmm. If it's really easy and a few people are asking for it, that's pretty good. You should probably do that if you have the free time. And if it's really easy and a ton of people are asking for it, you do that today.
Now, what is the greatest strength of the EventDay team?
Oh, gosh. We have some really absolutely incredible developers. Let me tell you, like working with James Harris is incredible. He's an amazing developer. He's one of the best I've ever known. And so number one, they're really amazing and fast and being able to get code deployed quickly. They also are really flexible. They know how to think like one of our clients might think. It's a hard thing to get someone who is like that, who is able to not only think just as a developer, but also as a customer in a way. That's one of the, I think, our main highlights of our team is just we're pretty flexible. And another thing that's really nice is that we're very horizontal, I would say. So we don't, we're not very hierarchical, meaning like if I say like, hey, we should do this thing and we should do it this way. A lot of times Michael will tell me like, no, I don't think we should do that. Like, that's not good. Like, they don't actually want this. They want this. I'm like, you know what? You're right. Yeah, that's a better idea. We could do it this way. So we're very collaborative. No one's afraid to speak up if they feel like, no, this isn't the right approach. And so it's, we're very open to change in that way. And the same way with our developers, like, between each other, they are very good at recommending different ideas and taking criticism well.
Now, do you have any favorite features?
Yeah, let's see. The Race Day check-in app generally is amazing. I would say that one of the coolest things that we had done recently was the ability to update custom question responses in the check-in app. And we also added a way to customize the user experience of the check-in app so that you could use it for many different purposes. So over the past couple of years, we've enhanced it so that you can now change how you look someone up. So you can scan with a camera and you can change what happens when you look someone up. So usually with a check-in app, you type in the name or you scan it and it brings you to their information and you can click a button to check them in. You could now customize it to say, I want to go directly to this new screen to update their information. So what you could use this for is something like, let's say you're doing, we talked about this in one of our sessions. Let's say you're doing an early start corral and a few people are starting early. One of the really cool use cases you could come up with would be, hey, I want to have someone go to the start line with the Race Day check-in app, scan people's bibs, and switch them to the early start. So now in the Race Day scoring app, Race Day check-in app, you can make it so that the camera is always on and you can scan someone and it will bring you right to the screen where you can change their corral assignment. And then that will sync back over to Race Day scoring and put them into the early start. So you don't have to write up that spreadsheet to figure out which people should be imported into it. You could do it in the check-in app right away. That's one of my favorite features, is just how the flexibility that we have in that application.
Any fun stories that you want to share from working with RunSignup?
Working with RunSignup, holy cow. Yeah, so this one's fun. It was not a success. It was a funny story, though. So when we first launched Race Day scoring, we had this big idea. We wanted to do certification for Race Day scoring. We wanted to basically have everybody execute a race scoring scenario, time the race at a conference. So we're going to do it at a symposium, and we're going to walk everyone through how to do Race Day scoring in real time. And it sounded amazing. Sounded like, oh, it's such a great idea. And so it's at a hotel, and we got 50 people in a room, Race Day scoring, like, beta version loaded up. And this is like 2017, 2018, around that time. So very early days for Race Day scoring. And basically, we still do the certification today. It's different, but it's based on the same concepts. But one of the big things that's changed is that back in that first time we did it, we had everyone working on a single race on RunSignup. They'd find this Race Day certification race on RunSignup. I add them as race directors. They'd import it, and they'd have the participant data already in there. They could see it load in, and then we would step by step walk them through how they'd collect the reads from a file that I provided to them, and then they could produce the results. Well, we quickly found out that there were two main problems. Number one, when you have 50 people in a room making requests to runsignup.com over and over and over again, Steven Sigwart finds out about it and shuts down your IP address. So in the middle of our first certification class, RunSignup stops working for everyone. Well, the integration stops working. All the requests are failing, and we're freaking out. Like, what is going on? Like, the sync is failing. Nothing is working. And we figured out that we got cut off because Steven thought that someone was trying to shut down RunSignup. I was like, Steven, you have to whitelist our IP address at the hotel because everyone is using it, and we need to get through this. This is looking terrible for us. So that was number one awful. We got past that eventually. The next problem was, race day scoring is an incredible piece of software. It allows you to see real-time updates to participant data. As soon as you make a change here, it ends up at RunSignup, and as soon as you make a change there, it ends up in race day scoring. That's great unless you have 50 people connected to the same race, and someone decides to see what happens if they delete all the participants. So at a certain point during the demo, someone's like, hey, my participants just disappeared. And then other people are like, oh yeah, mine just did too. And I'm like, oh no.
The sync works.
Yeah, the sync worked. Yeah, but someone deleted all the participants, and it was awful. It was just one thing after another. We learned our lesson for sure. But that was probably it was very stressful at the time, but it was very funny afterwards.
Well, thanks for talking with us, Matt.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.